The stars had always been quiet. For 300 years, humanity had spread across the darkness of space. They built colonies on distant moons. They created stations that floated between worlds. Earth remained their home, the center of everything they had become. But the stars had always been quiet. Until now. Admiral stood alone on the observation deck of the orbital station called Horizon's Edge. She was 53 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, the blue curve of Earth filled the window. Ahead of her, something impossible was happening. The first ship appeared like a tear in the fabric of space. Then another, then 100, then 1,000. They kept coming, emerging from nothing, their dark hulls blocking out the distant stars, counted them silently. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. When she stopped counting, there were more than 12,000 alien warships sitting at the edge of the solar system. She had known this day would come. Every human leader had known. They had watched the galaxy for centuries, tracking the movements of the species that called themselves the Dominion. They had intercepted communications describing the fall of world after world. 47 species had been conquered. Some were enslaved. Others were simply erased. Now they had come for Earth. Pressed her hand against the cold glass of the observation window. She felt no fear. She felt only a cold, hard determination that had been building inside her for 20 years. Since the day a probe had destroyed a human research station in the Outer Rim. Since the day she had watched 300 people die on her screen, unable to do anything to save them. "Admiral," the voice came from behind her. Lieutenant Shin, her communications officer, stood at the door. She was young, barely 25, with a face that still held traces of innocence, but her voice was steady. "The Council has assembled. They are waiting for you." Nodded, she took one last look at the alien fleet, then turned and walked toward her duty. The United Earth Defense Council met in a bunker beneath the streets of Seoul. It was a room built for war, with walls of reinforced steel and screens that showed every corner of the solar system. When entered, the most powerful people in human civilization were already seated around the central table. Fleet Commander Han sat at the head. He was an older man, nearly 70, but his mind was sharper than anyone half his age. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Beside him sat General, commander of all ground forces, a soldier who had never lost a battle. Strategic Director Park Sara was there too, a woman who could see patterns in chaos and predict the movements of enemies before they knew their own plans. Chief Science Officer completed the circle, the brilliant mind behind most of humanity's defensive technology. "Admiral," said as she took her seat, "you have seen the fleet." "Yes, Commander. 12,000 vessels, possibly more. They are holding position at the edge of the system. They have not attempted communication yet." "They will," Park Sora said. Her fingers moved across a data pad, pulling up information. "They follow a pattern. They always send the same message. Surrender or die. They give their targets time to despair. It makes the conquest easier." As if to prove her right, the main screen flickered. A new signal was being received. Everyone in the room turned to watch as the alien transmission began to play. The creature that appeared on screen was unlike anything human. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in black armor that seemed to grow from its own body. Its eyes were red and cold, without any trace of mercy or understanding. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the system into flat, emotionless words. "I am High Sovereign, Commander of the Expeditionary Fleet. You are the species called humanity. Your worlds have been, your resources have been assessed. Your military strength has been measured and found insignificant." Paused, as if waiting for fear to set in. "You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. All military vessels will power down and await collection. All governments will dissolve. All citizens will prepare for integration into the labor caste of the Dominion. Resistance is not recommended. It will only determine how many of you survive." The transmission ended. The room was silent. General was the first to speak. "Labor caste, they mean slaves." "They mean property," corrected. "They do not see other species as people. They see resources, workers, tools." "Then we fight," said. His voice was hard as stone. "We knew this day would come. We prepared for it." Fleet Commander looked around the table. His eyes met each person in turn. "Before we make any decision, we must understand what we face. Admiral, your assessment." She pulled up the tactical display showing the alien fleet in detail. 12,437 vessels confirmed. Their technology is advanced but not beyond our understanding. Their weapons are powerful. Their shields are strong. In a straight fight, ship against ship, they would defeat us. We have only 300 vessels in the home fleet. "Then we cannot win," someone said from the back of the room. Turned to face the speaker. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I did not say that. I said we cannot win in a straight fight. We have never planned for a straight fight." She looked at Fleet Commander. He nodded slowly. "Project Prometheus," he said. "It is time." The name hung in the air like a ghost. Only a handful of people in the room knew what it meant. The others had heard rumors, whispers of a secret program that had been running for 200 years. A weapon so powerful that humanity had hoped they would never need to use it. "Before we activate Prometheus," said, "we must give them one chance, one warning. If they turn back, we let them go. If they continue—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Commander nodded. "Agreed. Prepare the warning. Make sure they understand exactly what they are facing." He stood, his old bones creaking. "And make sure they understand that we are not afraid." The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. They would send their warning, and if they ignored it, they would learn why every species in the galaxy should fear the children of Earth. As the meeting ended, Admiral walked alone through the corridors of the bunker. She passed young officers and old soldiers, scientists and engineers, all of them working toward the same goal. They were her people, her family, and she would protect them no matter the cost. She stopped at a window that looked out over the city of Seoul. The lights of the city sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, children were sleeping in their beds, unaware of the danger in the sky. Parents were watching over them, hoping for a future that might never come. Made a silent promise to them all. They had conquered 47 species. They had never faced humanity. They did not know what they were dealing with. But they would learn. Dr. Bin sat in his laboratory beneath the mountains of Provence, watching the same data that the council was watching. He was a small man with tired eyes and hands that never stopped shaking, not from fear, but from the burden of what he had created. Project Prometheus was his life's work. 20 years of research, thousands of scientists working in secret, technology that could tear the fabric of reality itself. All of it ready, waiting in silence for the day that had finally arrived. His assistant, Lieutenant No Wu, stood beside him. "The fleet has arrived, Doctor. It is bigger than we expected." "Size does not matter," Bin said quietly. 10 ships or 10,000, the result will be the same. He looked at the screen showing the alien armada. 12,000 ships, crewed by millions of beings who thought they were invincible, who thought humanity was just another species to conquer. They had no idea what was coming. The shadow had fallen over Earth, but Earth had been preparing for this shadow for 300 years, and when the shadow learned what humanity had become, it would be too late to run. 48 hours passed like water through fingers. The fleet began to move. Admiral watched from the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, humanity's greatest warship. It was a massive vessel, 3 kilometers long, built in secret over 50 years. But even the Eternal Vigilance looked small compared to the wall of alien ships advancing toward Earth. "They are accelerating," Lieutenant Shin reported from her station. Her voice was calm, but could see the tension in her shoulders. Current trajectory puts them at Mars orbit in 12 hours. Any response to our communication requests? Asked. None, Admiral. They are ignoring all channels. Nodded. She had expected this. They did not talk, they took, they destroyed, they moved on. That was all they knew. The first attack came without warning. 3 outer defense platforms, small stations that monitored the edge of the solar system, suddenly exploded. The broadcast the destruction across every frequency, making sure every human saw what they could do. On Earth, people watched the explosions on their screens. Some cried, some screamed, some held their children close and prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. In the bunker beneath Seoul, Fleet Commander Han watched with a face of stone. How many? 87 personnel, General reported. No survivors. They are trying to frighten us, Strategic Director Park Sora said. Standard psychological warfare. They want us to panic, to surrender before they have to waste resources fighting. It will not work, said. Prepare the warning transmission. We have given them enough time. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance and prepared to do the hardest thing she had ever done. She was going to give the one chance to live. She knew they would not take it. She knew what would happen next, but she had to try. Humanity had to be able to say they tried. She straightened her uniform and looked at the camera. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. She began to speak. To the commanders of the approaching fleet. This is Admiral of the United Earth Defense Force. On the flagship, Devourer of Worlds, High Sovereign was preparing for the final assault. His war room was filled with commanders from a dozen conquered species, all of them now serving the Dominion. They watched the human transmission with amusement. You have been detected, the human female said on the screen. You have been marked. We are sending this message not as a request for mercy, but as a kindness, a final warning that your species might remember. Laughed. It was a horrible sound like metal scraping against metal. Around him, his commanders laughed too. They had heard threats before, empty words from dying species. Turn back now, leave our space, do not return. She is brave, Subcommander said. He was younger than, with fresher armor and newer scars. Foolish but brave. All prey animals are brave when cornered, replied. It means nothing. The human admiral continued. If you proceed beyond the boundary of Mars orbit, you will begin a response that cannot be stopped. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be no second warning. No mercy, repeated mockingly. Does she think we want mercy? We have spent 300 years preparing for this moment, the human said. Her eyes seemed to look directly at, though he knew that was impossible. We did not prepare to survive. We prepared to win. For a moment, something cold touched his heart, something that might have been doubt. He pushed it away. This is humanity's final warning. We suggest you listen to it. The transmission ended. The room was silent for a moment, then rose from his command throne, his armor clicking and shifting around him. Send no response, he ordered. Increase speed. I want us in attack position within 6 hours. Let the humans watch us come. Let them understand that their words mean nothing. On the Eternal Vigilance, Lieutenant reported, no response from the alien fleet, Admiral. They are accelerating. Closed her eyes for a moment. She had known this would happen. She had hoped foolishly that it would not. But they had chosen their path. Now humanity would choose theirs. Connect me to Project Prometheus Command, she said. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Dr. Bin answered the call. His face appeared on screen, tired and old beyond his years. Doctor said, they have refused our warning. Bin nodded slowly. I watched the transmission, Admiral. You did everything you could. Is the system ready? It has been ready for 20 years. We have been waiting for this day, hoping it would never come. He paused, and something dark passed across his face. But ready? Yes. The moment they cross Mars' orbit, we can activate. And you are certain it will work? Ben almost smiled. Admiral, I have spent my entire adult life building this weapon. I have tested it on asteroids, on abandoned ships, on every target I could find without revealing its existence. It works. The question is not whether it will work. The question is whether we can live with ourselves after we use it. Understood. She had asked herself the same question 1,000 times. We have no choice, Doctor. I know, Ben said. That is what makes it bearable. The hours passed. The fleet grew larger on humanity's screens. Ships of every size filled the void, their weapons charged, their commanders eager for conquest. On Earth, the population was told to remain calm. Most people had never seen an alien before. Now they watched 12,000 alien warships approach their home. Some people rioted. Some people looted. But most people simply waited, trusting their leaders, trusting their military, trusting that humanity had a plan. Admiral gathered her bridge crew for a final briefing. They stood around the tactical display, watching the red dots of the enemy fleet creep closer. In approximately 2 hours, said, the fleet will cross Mars' orbit. When they do, Project Prometheus will activate. I cannot tell you exactly what will happen. That information is classified at the highest level, but I can tell you this. She looked at each of them in turn. Lieutenant, Navigator Park Menu, Weapons Officer, they were young, all of them. They had joined the fleet to explore the stars, not to fight in a war for survival. We gave them every chance, continued. We warned them. They chose to ignore us. What happens next is their responsibility, not ours. Remember that. No matter what you see, no matter what you feel, remember that we tried to avoid this. Admiral, Lieutenant said quietly, do you really believe that? Was silent for a long moment. I believe that we do what we must to protect our people. I believe that the universe is not fair, and that sometimes good people have to do terrible things to survive. And I believe that if we do not stop the here, they will enslave every human being alive and work them to death in their mines and factories. She straightened her spine. So yes, Lieutenant, I believe what we are about to do is necessary, and I believe we will live with the weight of it for the rest of our lives. That is the price of survival. The bridge was silent. Outside the windows, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere in the darkness, 12,000 ships came closer, unaware that they were flying toward their own destruction. In his command center, Dr. Ben ran the final system checks. 10,000 satellites hidden throughout the solar system reported ready. Quantum displacement arrays powered up and locked on target. Temporal anchors prepared to freeze enemy vessels in place. And buried in the deepest vault of the facility, Project Final Light waited in silence. The last resort, the weapon they hoped they would never need. Doctor, Lieutenant Nowu said, all systems are green. Prometheus is ready for activation. Ben looked at the countdown clock. 90 minutes until they crossed the threshold. Good, he said. Now we wait, and we pray that they turn back. But he knew they would not. They had conquered 47 species. They had never met a species they could not defeat. They had never met humanity. Specialist sat at her weapons console, her hands resting lightly on the controls. She was 28 years old, the daughter of farmers from Island. She had joined the military because she wanted to see the stars. She had never imagined she would be part of something like this. Are you ready? The officer beside her asked. Looked at her console. One button, one command, and 12,000 ships would cease to exist. Ready, she said. Her voice did not shake. Her hands did not tremble. She had trained for this. She was ready. The clock counted down. The fleet approached, and humanity waited in silence for the moment that would change everything. The final warning had been given. They had ignored it. Now they would learn why that was a mistake. High Sovereign stood on the command deck of the Devourer of Worlds and looked at his empire of ships. They stretched across the darkness of space like a sea of black iron. Each one was a weapon of war. Each one had destroyed worlds before. Together, they were the greatest military force in 3 galaxies. And they were about to crush another insignificant species. "Report on the human defenses," ordered. Sub-Commander stepped forward with a data display. He had been studying the humans for months, preparing for this invasion. Their fleet numbers approximately 300 vessels, sovereign. Their largest ship is the one called Eternal Vigilance. It is impressive by their standards, but nothing we cannot handle. Ground forces. Scattered across their colonies, they have approximately 2 billion soldiers, but their weapons are standard projectile and energy types. Nothing advanced. Nodded, this was what he expected. The Dominion scouts had been watching humanity for decades. They knew everything about this species, their history, their wars, their petty conflicts over resources and beliefs. They were no different from any other prey species. Soft, weak, divided. "What about special weapons?" asked. The human transmission mentioned that they had been preparing for 300 years. Made a dismissive gesture. "Our deep scans have detected unusual energy signatures throughout their system, hidden structures beneath the surfaces of moons, buried installations on asteroids, but our analysts believe these are defensive bunkers, shelters for their leaders to hide in while we take their world." Nothing else. Nothing of concern, sovereign. The humans have no advanced technology, no weapons that could threaten our fleet. Their warning was a bluff, a desperate attempt to frighten us away. Laughed. The sound echoed through the command deck, cold and cruel. "Then they are fools as well as cowards. Order the fleet to battle formation. We will show these humans what the Dominion does to species that dare to threaten us." The orders went out across the fleet. 12,000 ships began to arrange themselves into the classic attack pattern. It was called the Closing Fist, a formation that would surround Earth from all sides and strike simultaneously. No species had ever survived it. As the fleet moved, thought about the human admiral who had sent the warning. A female, which was unusual. In the Dominion, females were breeding stock, not commanders. But humans were strange creatures. They let their females fight alongside their males. They even let them lead. It did not matter. Soon all humans would be equal, equal in their slavery. "Sovereign," another officer called out. "We are approaching the boundary they mentioned, Mars' orbit." Looked at the tactical display. The red planet hung in space ahead of them, a dusty ball of rock that the humans had barely colonized. Beyond it, Earth waited like a ripe fruit ready to be picked. "Any change in the human fleet?" "No, sovereign. They are holding position near Earth. They are not moving to intercept." This surprised slightly. Most species tried to meet the Dominion fleet in open space. Hopping that distance from there would give them an advantage. The humans were staying close to Earth. Either they were cowards or they were planning something. "Increase scanner sensitivity," ordered. "I want to know about any weapon they might have." The scanners swept across the human system. They detected the human fleet, small and pitiful. They detected the orbital stations around Earth, hastily built and poorly armed. They detected nothing that could threaten the Dominion. But they also detected something strange. "Sovereign," said, confusion in his voice. "There are unusual readings throughout the system. Thousands of objects that we classified as debris or asteroids are now showing energy signatures." "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown, sovereign. We have never seen anything like them before." Felt a moment of uncertainty. Just a moment. Then he pushed it aside. The humans were primitives. Whatever technology they had, it could not match the weapons that had destroyed 47 civilizations. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "If the humans have hidden weapons, we will destroy them along with everything else." The fleet crossed Mars' orbit. On the Eternal Vigilance, Admiral received the notification. Admiral, the enemy fleet has crossed the threshold. Took a deep breath. This was the moment, the point of no return. Open a channel to Project Prometheus Command. Dr. Bin's face appeared on her screen. He looked older than he had 2 days ago. The weight of what was about to happen was visible in every line of his face. "They have crossed," said. "I know," Bin replied. "We are tracking them." He paused. "Admiral, there is still time. We could try one more warning." "You know it would not work." "I know." Bin closed his eyes. I wanted to believe there was another way." "There is not. There never was." Bin nodded slowly. "Then may history forgive us for what we are about to do." On the flagship, the situation was changing. Reports were coming in from across the fleet, each one more confusing than the last. "Sovereign, the energy signatures we detected are increasing in intensity." "Sovereign, we are detecting some kind of field forming around our vessels." "Sovereign, our weapon systems are experiencing minor fluctuations." Listen to the reports with growing annoyance. "Technical malfunctions, nothing more. Our ships are the finest in the galaxy. Human technology cannot affect them." "But Sovereign—" "Silence!" roared. "We are the Dominion. We have conquered species that bent light and controlled gravity. We have destroyed civilizations that existed before the stars were born. These humans are nothing. Their little tricks are nothing." The bridge fell silent. No one dared to argue with the High Sovereign. Stepped closer to, speaking quietly. "Sovereign, perhaps we should slow our advance. Study these energy signatures more carefully." Turned on him with fury in his eyes. "You want me to show fear, to hesitate before a species of soft-skinned primates? The Dominion does not hesitate. The Dominion conquers. If you are too weak to understand that, perhaps you do not deserve your rank." Step back, chastened. "I apologize, Sovereign, I spoke out of turn." "Yes, you did. Now order the fleet to accelerate. I want to be in Earth orbit within 2 hours." The order went out. 12,000 ships increased their speed, racing toward the blue planet that waited in the distance. On one of those ships, a young officer named watched the human planet grow larger on his screen. He was not cruel. He had been conscripted into the fleet, forced to serve a dominion he did not believe in. But he followed orders because the alternative was death. Still, something about this mission troubled him. He had watched the human warning transmission. He had seen the calm certainty in the female admiral's eyes. She had not looked afraid. She had looked sorry. Sorry for what? The fleet continued its advance. The strange energy signatures continued to grow, and somewhere in the darkness, 10,000 satellites locked onto their targets. In the command center beneath Korea, Dr. Bin watched the final countdown. 30 minutes until optimal engagement range. All systems were ready. All that remained was the order. His assistant, Lieutenant No Woo, stood beside him. "Doctor, are you all right?" Bin laughed softly. It was not a happy sound. "I am about to kill millions of living beings, Lieutenant. No, I am not all right. I have not been all right since I started building this weapon 20 years ago." "They are enemies, Doctor. They would kill us if they could." "I know, that is what I tell myself every day, that they are the aggressors, that they chose this, that we gave them every chance to turn back." He paused. "But they are still living beings. They have families somewhere, children perhaps, and in a few minutes they will all cease to exist." Wu did not know what to say. He had never thought about the aliens as anything other than enemies. Monsters. Threats to be destroyed. But the doctor's words made him think. "Will you still give the order?" Wu asked finally. Bin looked at him with tired eyes. "Yes, because if I do not, billions of humans will suffer the same fate. They will not show us mercy. They will work us to death in their mines and factories. They will take our children and turn them into slaves. They will erase our culture, our history, our very identity." He turned back to the display. "So yes, Lieutenant, I will give the order. and I will carry the weight of it for the rest of my life. That is my duty. That is my burden. That is what it means to protect the people I love." The countdown continued. On the flagship, sat on his throne and dreamed of conquest. He imagined himself standing on the surface of Earth, the human leaders kneeling before him. He imagined the resources flowing into the Dominion's coffers, the slaves working in the Dominion's factories, the glory that would be his. He did not know that he had less than 30 minutes to live. He did not know that every ship in his fleet was already targeted, already marked, already dead. He did not know that humanity had built something that would change the galaxy forever. But he would learn. They all would learn. 300 years ago, humanity had looked at the stars and seen the truth. They were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, but the galaxy was also full of death. Species rose and fell like waves on a beach. The strong conquered. The weak disappeared. There was no justice in the cosmos, no fairness, only power. The first transmissions from the Dominion reached Earth in the year 2047. They were not meant for humans. They were communications between ships, casual conversations about their latest conquest. A species called the Had resisted. The Had responded by burning there until nothing remained but ash. Human scientists listened to those transmissions and understood what they meant. Someday, the would come for Earth. Someday, humanity would face the same choice that the Had faced: surrender and become slaves, or resist and be destroyed. The world's leaders gathered in secret. They argued for months. Some wanted to reach out to try to make peace. Others wanted to hide, to make Earth seem unimportant. But a small group of scientists had a different idea. Dr. Park was the first to propose it. She was a physicist, brilliant but strange, known for ideas that seemed impossible until she made them work. She stood before the assembled leaders and showed them her calculations. "We cannot win a conventional war against she said. "Their fleet is too large. Their technology is too advanced, but there is another way. A weapon that does not fight, a weapon that simply removes." She showed them the theory: quantum displacement. The ability to take an object and scatter its atoms across dimensions that humans could not even see. The object would not explode. It would not burn. It would simply stop existing in any way that mattered. "If we can build this weapon," Park said, "we can destroy any fleet, any army, any threat, without a war, without a battle. They will attack us and they will simply vanish." The leaders were skeptical. The technology seemed impossible, but they had no other options. They approved the project. They called it Prometheus, after the god who gave fire to humanity, and they swore that it would remain secret until the day it was needed. For 300 years, humanity built in silence. Dr. Park died 50 years later, but her work continued. Each generation added to it. Scientists spent their entire lives developing components, never knowing how they fit together. Engineers built satellites and stations, thinking they were defense platforms. Pilots flew missions to distant asteroids, believing they were setting up mining operations. Everyone contributed, but almost no one knew the truth. The Prometheus grid grew slowly, invisibly. 10,000 satellites spread across the solar system. Each one contained a quantum displacement array, a device that could tear a ship out of existence. Each one was connected to the others, forming a network that could target thousands of objects simultaneously. But the grid was not the only weapon. Dr. Bin joined Project Prometheus as a young man. He was a genius like Park before him, but his genius was darker. He looked at the grid and saw its limitations. It could destroy a fleet, yes. But what if the fleet was too large? What if the enemy adapted? What if the grid failed? He began working on something new, something terrible. He called it Project Final Light. The theory was elegant in its horror. Every object in the universe existed because of probability. Atoms stayed together because it was probable that they would. Ships held their shape because it was probable that they would. But what if you could change that probability? What if you could make it impossible for something to exist? Final Light was a device that could collapse the probability field around any target. The target would not be destroyed. It would simply stop being possible. Reality itself would adjust to a universe where the target had never existed in the first place. The first test destroyed a small asteroid. One moment it was there. The next, even the sensors could not remember it. The scientists checked their records and found no mention of the asteroid. It had been erased not just from existence, but from history. General, then a young colonel, witnessed the test. He was horrified. "We cannot use this," he said. "This is not a weapon. This is an abomination. If we use this, we become worse than the—" Dr. Bin understood his fear. He felt it himself. "You are right," he said, "but consider the alternative. They have conquered 47 species. They have killed billions. They will kill billions more, and someday they will come for us." He looked at the empty space where the asteroid had been. "I do not want to use this weapon. I pray we never have to use it. But if the choice is between our children becoming slaves and erasing the enemy from existence, I know which I choose." General was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "Keep building it, but pray that we never need it." 20 years passed. Dr. Bin aged. His hair turned gray. His hands began to shake. But he continued his work, adding layers of safety, targeting systems, fail-safes. Final Light would only activate if the grid failed. It would only be used as a last resort. Then the came. Now, as the alien fleet approached Earth, Bin sat in his command center and watched the screens. The grid was online. All 10,000 satellites were charged and ready. The targeting systems had locked onto every ship in the enemy fleet. "Doctor," Lieutenant Nowu said, "final countdown, 2 minutes to optimal range." Bin nodded. He looked at the display showing the fleet, 12,000 ships, millions of crew, all of them about to cease to exist. "Have you ever killed anyone, Lieutenant?" he asked. Wu blinked. "No, Doctor, I am a technician. I have never been in combat." "Neither have I," Bin smiled sadly. "I have spent my entire life building weapons, but I have never pulled a trigger, never watched someone die because of my actions. In a few minutes, that will change." Specialist sat at her console nearby. She was listening, though she pretended not to. She thought about her parents on island, her younger brother who wanted to be a pilot, the friends she had left behind when she joined Project Prometheus. She thought about what she was about to help do. "Doctor," she said quietly, "are we doing the right thing?" Bin looked at her with tired, ancient eyes. "I do not know. I know that if we do not stop them, they will enslave us. I know that we gave them every chance to turn back. I know that they came here to destroy everything we are." He paused. "Is that enough to justify what we are about to do? I do not know, but it is enough for me to press the button." The countdown continued. 1 minute, 50 seconds, 40. On the Eternal Vigilance, Admiral watched the same countdown on her screen. Her hands were folded behind her back. Her face was calm, but inside she felt the weight of 300 years pressing down on her. All those scientists, all those engineers, all those people who had given their lives to build this weapon, they had done it so that their children would not have to kneel before aliens, so that humanity would survive. Now it was time to see if their sacrifice was worth it. "All ships, this is Admiral," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "Prepare for Prometheus Protocol activation. Do not engage the enemy. Do not fire. Simply watch. And remember what you see. Remember it for the rest of your lives." Lieutenant looked at her commander with something like awe. "Admiral, what exactly is going to happen?" Did not answer immediately. She watched the countdown tick down, 20 seconds, 15. "The impossible, Lieutenant. We are about to do the impossible." In the command center, Dr. Bin placed his hand on the activation control. His fingers were steady now. The shaking had stopped. He felt only a cold, terrible certainty. Grid is ready, Wu reported. All targets locked, awaiting final authorization. Bin took one last breath. He thought about his wife, dead now for 10 years. He thought about his daughter, living on the Mars colony, unaware of what her father had built. He thought about all the children on Earth who would never know how close they had come to slavery. Then he spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. Prometheus Protocol authorized. Activate. The satellites hummed. The grid came to life. And across the solar system, 10,000 quantum displacement arrays fired simultaneously. The fleet had seconds to live. They had been warned. They had not listened. Now they would pay the price. The first ship disappeared without a sound. High Sovereign was in the middle of giving orders when Sub-Commander interrupted him. Sovereign, we have lost contact with the destroyer Fang of Victory. Was annoyed. What do you mean lost contact? I mean the ship is gone, Sovereign. No explosion, no distress signal. It was there and now it is not. Before could respond, another report came in. Sovereign, 3 more ships have vanished. The cruisers Dawn Striker, Iron Will, and Blood Oath. No debris, no energy signatures. They simply ceased to exist. Felt the first touch of something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Show me, he commanded. The tactical display zoomed in on the area where the ships had been. There was nothing there, not even dust. The ships had simply stopped existing, as if they had never been built. 10 more ships lost, Sovereign. 20 more. 50. The reports came faster and faster. Across the fleet, ships were vanishing. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, battle stations. They flickered like candles in the wind and then they were gone. What is happening? Roared. His voice echoed across the command deck, but no one had an answer. Was frantically checking his instruments. Unknown, Sovereign, our sensors show nothing. No weapons fire, no energy beams, no projectiles. The ships are simply disappearing. That is impossible. I know, Sovereign, but it is happening. Watched the tactical display in horror. The cloud of red dots representing his fleet was shrinking before his eyes. 1,000 ships gone. 2,000. 3,000. The rate was accelerating. Ships were vanishing faster than he could count. Across the fleet, panic was spreading. Commanders screamed for orders. Crews abandoned their posts. Some ships tried to retreat, turning their engines to maximum power, racing back toward the edge of the solar system. It did not matter. The vanishing followed them. There was no escape. On the destroyer Swift Death, a young officer named watched his comrades disappear. One moment his commander was standing beside him. The next, the commander was gone. Not dead, not injured, simply not there anymore. Ran for the escape pods. He did not know if they would help. He did not know anything anymore. All he knew was that something terrible was happening, something beyond his understanding. He reached the pod bay just as the ship shuddered around him. The walls began to flicker. Reality itself seemed to bend. Threw himself into a pod and hit the launch button. The pod shot into space. Behind him, the Swift Death vanished like a dream upon waking. Floated alone in the darkness, watching the impossible unfold. All around him, ships were blinking out of existence. Massive battleships that had destroyed worlds. Carriers that held thousands of fighters. Command vessels that coordinated the greatest military force in 3 galaxies. All of them gone. In less than 5 seconds, 90% of the fleet had ceased to exist. On the Devourer of Worlds, High Sovereign watched his empire crumble. 6,000 ships, 8,000, 10,000. The numbers climbed higher and higher, each one representing thousands of lives erased from the universe. Retreat, screamed. All ships fall back, get us out of here. But it was too late. The Devourer of Worlds shuddered as the same phenomenon that had taken the other ships began to take effect. The walls flickered. The lights dimmed. Reality itself started to tear apart at the seams. looked at with terror in his eyes. "Sovereign, what is happening to us?" Had no answer. For the first time in his life, he had no answer. The last thing he saw was the tactical display showing the final count. 12,437 ships, all gone, all vanished, all erased from existence. Then the devourer of worlds flickered one last time and disappeared. The entire attack had lasted 4.7 seconds. On the Eternal Vigilance, Admiral watched the tactical display update in real time. The red dots representing the enemy fleet disappeared one by one, faster and faster, until there was nothing left but empty space. The bridge was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stared at the display, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. "Prometheus protocol complete," Lieutenant said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Time elapsed, 4.7 seconds. Enemy vessels remaining, 0. Felt her legs weaken. She gripped the edge of the command console to steady herself. Confirm the count. 12,437 vessels, Admiral, all displaced. No survivors detected. No survivors. Millions of lives, gone in less than 5 seconds. Closed her eyes. She had known this would happen. She had prepared for it. But knowing and seeing were two different things. "Admiral Navigator Park Menu said, his voice shaking. "I am detecting a small object in the debris field, an escape pod design. A survivor. It appears so, Admiral. One escape pod, one life sign. Considered this. One survivor, one witness, one being who could tell the rest of the galaxy what had happened here." "Leave it," she said. "Let them find their way back to space. Let them tell their people what happened. Let them spread the word." She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral to all Earth forces. The threat has been neutralized. Stand down from combat alert." She paused, searching for the right words. "Today we did what we had to do. We gave them every chance. They chose to ignore us. Remember that. Remember it always." In the command center beneath Korea, Dr. Bin watched the same data. His hand still rested on the activation control, though the weapon had already done its work. "It is over," Lieutenant Wu said quietly. "Yes," Bin replied, "it is over." He looked at the display showing the empty space where the fleet had been. 12,000 ships, millions of lives, all of them gone because they had refused to listen. Doctor Specialist said, "Are you all right?" Bin laughed softly. It was not a happy sound. "No, Specialist, I am not all right. I have just killed more beings than anyone in human history. I am not all right and I never will be again." He rose from his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 63 years. "But I would do it again, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, because our children will live, our species will survive, and that is worth any price." He walked out of the command center without looking back. Across the solar system, the news spread. The fleet was gone, Earth was safe, humanity had won. People poured into the streets. They cheered, they cried, they held each other and thanked gods they had forgotten. The nightmare was over, the monsters had been defeated. But in the military headquarters, in the research facilities, in the command centers where the people who knew the truth sat in silence, there was no celebration. Only a heavy, terrible understanding of what they had done. They had built a weapon that could erase life from existence. They had used it without mercy, and the galaxy would never be the same. Officer drifted alone in his escape pod, watching the empty space where his fleet had been. He was the last in the human system, the only survivor of the greatest military disaster in galactic history. He did not understand what had happened. He did not know how the humans had done it. All he knew was that 12,000 ships and millions of his people had simply ceased to exist. His pod's long-range transmitter was still working. He activated it and began sending a message, a warning, a plea. "This is Officer of the Expeditionary Fleet. The fleet is gone, all ships destroyed. I repeat, all ships destroyed. Do not come to this system. Do not approach Earth. The humans have a weapon, a terrible weapon. They warned us. We did not listen." He paused, tears streaming down his alien face. "Do not make the same mistake. Stay away from Earth. Stay away from humanity. They are not what we thought they were. They are not prey." He looked out the window at the distant blue planet, the world that had just destroyed the greatest military force in 3 galaxies. "They are death,"